Hi, this is Arnav. Welcome to the channel. Today I have Nash with me. Nash is the CEO of Pyrofex, which builds high performance distributed development tools. And today we are going to talk to him more about his project and other projects and products that he's building. So, hi Nash, how are you?
Hi, Arnav. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, awesome. So, can you give a brief background and how did you actually get into the crypto space and start with Pyrofex?
So my co-founder, Dr. Mike Stay, and I started Pyrofex in 2016. We both had a fair amount of experience in the information security space. Had done a little bit of work in cryptography, up to that point. We'd spent a number of years working at Google, and we're interested in building development tools for large-scale distributed systems. About a year later, we were contacted by Greg Meredith, and he asked us to help him develop RChain, which needed a new programming language for expressing smart contracts in a way that would allow developers to write smart contracts that were reliable and provably correct. And we thought that this fit our skill set nicely and that it would be a fun project. And so we jumped into the crypto space at that point. But honestly, we feel a little bit like Johnny come latelys. We haven't been in it for all that long. We know a lot about cryptography, but we're sort of learning blockchain and having a lot of fun doing it.
Okay, so you basically started out with Pyrofex as as the first project. So this is sort of like your first project in the crypto space.
Yeah, RChain is our first project in the blockchain space. Mike and I have both done a number of projects in cryptography. So I guess I'm an old
Okay.
hand and I've got gray in my beard. So you say crypto, and I think hashing algorithms and encryption and public key type stuff. And
Mhm.
um, but in the blockchain space, yeah, RChain is our first project. We're very excited to have the opportunity to work on it, and it's been a lot of fun.
Mhm. So can you explain like what is the overall vision of Pyrofex and what are you trying to build?
So we started Pyrofex because we think that there's a lot of applied mathematics that can lead to better programming tools for developers.
Hmm.
That we think, in particular, things like advances in things like type theory and in the ability to do automated proof checking or automated theorem proving will allow developers to write code that's more correct and can run at scale more easily and faster. And we
Hmm.
wanted to build the tools to help developers do that, right? We saw both the cloud and then eventually the blockchain coming along. These are both large-scale decentralized technologies for writing computer programs, and we felt like developers just didn't have the tools in place that they needed to do the kinds of jobs that they wanted to get done. So Pyrofex is here to sort of give devs the things that they need in order to write code at scale and to write it well and to make their projects successful.
So like you are targeting in general blockchain developers, like say for developers building on top of Ethereum, Bitcoin, and RChain. Is that it?
Yeah, a number of our tools right now are very focused on the blockchain. We have an integrated development environment, or an IDE, that we're developing called CryptFX. It'll have integrated support for testing and deploying smart contracts on the blockchain. We're building a tool that you can download and run to handle payments. That is for blockchain integration with websites and other merchant solutions online. That's called NumFX. We obviously are working very closely with RChain, and we have a couple of other blockchain platform projects that we're involved in.
Mhm.
Uh, but the company, when we started out, we were thinking much more along the lines of cloud software. And so one of our older projects is called Pirate, and it's oriented around making it easier for people to write software in the cloud, regardless of whether they're using the blockchain or not.
Okay, okay. So you started talking about your projects. Can we go in like depth of them? Like you have NumFX, you have RChain, you're working with RChain, you have PYR8, Cryptofex, and Roland. These were the ones that I had like seen on your website. So can you
Yeah.
explain why have you chosen these projects and like what do they exactly do?
Well, CryptFX is the one that's probably most advanced of all of them, and it's going to likely to release in MVP form in the next couple of months. It's an integrated development environment. It allows developers to, it's similar to Xcode on Apple or Visual Studio for Microsoft platforms. The goal is to build an integrated development environment that takes advantage of the blockchain to allow developers to write dApps for whether it's Ethereum or RChain or EOS or whatever platform it is. We want to make it easy to write them, test them, manage them in production, right? This is one of the things that we haven't yet really started talking about in the crypto space is that in real production environments, you have to have upgrades, you need migrations, you need the ability to make changes to your software over time so that you can add features and that you can support different user use cases. We don't really have any of that stuff in the current toolkits. We're hoping that we can use CryptFX to help drive the development of features like that within the development tool space for blockchain. And in particular, because we want to help find a way to use the blockchain for developers to directly monetize their software. So CryptFX will eventually, it won't release with this feature, but eventually we're going to add an app store that will allow you to take your open source code off GitHub or whatever repo you're using and then monetize it directly through the IDE so that you can transact with other developers who are interested in using your code as part of their project. We think that the potential of the blockchain to help financialize the interactions and the sharing of code is exciting because it'll allow developers to earn a living directly writing code that their peers consume rather than having to do it in a corporate setting, for example.
So like it will have support for, say, Ethereum uses Solidity and Hyperledger uses like some other language, or EOS will use some other language. So it will have support for like all these languages. How does that architecture look like?
Yeah, initially we're going to launch with like syntax highlighting and formatting support for Solidity and for Rolang, which is the smart contracting language we've developed for the RChain project. In the long run, I think we're intending to support all the major blockchain languages. Exactly what order they come along in, I'm not quite sure. We'll have to see which projects get traction and which ones have less traction. And then, of course, it needs to be useful in general as an IDE for writing all kinds of code. I don't think that there's ever going to be a time when dApps don't involve legacy languages. So every dApp project is going to be some portion JavaScript, some portion Python, some portion Solidity, or maybe it'll be, some portion Rust and then some portion Rolang, depending upon what your developer's priorities are. And so we intend to support the full family of commonly used languages in order to allow devs to use the tools that they want. Obviously, it's an MVP for now. We're very tightly integrated with RChain, and we wanted to specifically build some tools that would help people onboard onto that platform. So that's our focus initially is RChain and Ethereum, but we'll be adding additional languages and platforms over time.
And like it will have features like, say, so if one wants to deploy an application to blockchain, it will have such features as well. Like from within the IDE, like you don't need to use Truffle or something like that. Will it have features like that as well?
Yeah, that's right. I think at the moment, I'd have to check with my guys to be sure exactly how they're doing it this week because it changes from week to week. But I think at the moment it integrates with Truffle, and so it knows how to drive environments like that in order to do deployments or set up test environments and then run your smart contracts on them. And yeah, it'll do it all for you. So it greatly simplifies the process of bringing all the tools onto your system and getting them ready to go and then making the deployments happen. And then obviously, we have the vision of ultimately, building an app store and then offering tools through the app store that will allow you to help manage versioning and migrations and, packages and all this other kind of stuff that's coming down the pipe.
Okay, got it. And so now I want to talk about like RChain specifically. So RChain is like you are involved with RChain like most heavily. So can you talk about like what's the status there? of your involvement and for the whole RChain platform in general? Like, when is it going to be on mainnet, and how is the development happening?
Yeah, so we currently represent the majority of the developers on the core dev team. I think we have a little bit less than 24 developers and project managers and other ancillary support staff that are working on RChain full time. We are we're preparing to launch testnet. We have a conference in Berlin, the 4th and 5th. I'm sorry, maybe it's the 5th and 6th.
Okay.
The 5th and 6th of September. So the testnet will launch on the 5th and 6th of September.
Okay.
And, it's going to be, it's a brand new platform. So obviously we've got a lot to learn about how it behaves and everything. You always learn things about the software that you've written, when you run it at scale for the first time. So we're hopeful that based on our results that we're going to be able to launch the main network at the end of the year in late Q4. So that's called the Mercury release. Our releases are named after the planets. So, our plan at the moment is to launch Mercury in December, for Venus to follow sometime late next year, and then to have several more releases after that. And of course, beyond that, it's sort of up to the community to decide what needs to happen next. But that's the current state of things. Personally, I think that the project looks pretty good. One of the things that we've put a lot of time and energy into is making the software that we run manageable in production. So we have a lot of production engineering features like built-in Prometheus support, so you can monitor your nodes if you're running a validator and you want to understand exactly how your node is performing. It's really easy to hook Prometheus up to your cluster of nodes and see how everything is running, and CPU and RAM utilization and traffic and all those kind of statistics. And we did that because we felt like one of the things that was really missing from the blockchain space, was a lot of built-in instrumentation and that type of thing. Rolang has come along really well. We've been writing a lot of the system itself in the programming language Rolang, so large amounts of the infrastructure are built in that. In fact, we just wrote most of the sharding architecture, and the cross-shard transactions were written last week or two. And that was done almost entirely in Rolang. So we're beginning to see how the language features that we designed over the last year and a half shake out in practice, and we're getting an idea for what needs to be added to make it really useful and easy for people to interact with in the future.
Got it. So can you talk more about Rolang and what are some features that, it's already obviously it's already is not liked by developers, and there are reasons for that. And in general, as well, we have languages like Scilla that Zelica is developing, and K framework, and all these other interesting projects that people are doing to check for errors or bugs in smart contract code, because once the code is deployed, you can't change it. So how are you approaching the development of Rolang itself?
Yeah, well, first of all, as an aside, we need tools that allow us to change smart contract code so that this isn't such a problem, right? But in Rolang, we're also trying to handle from the other side, which is that we would like to prevent as many of the bugs as we possibly can. So Rolang has, as a general design, Rolang is based on a model of computation called the row calculus, which is an extension of Robin Milner's pi calculus. Most people are familiar with virtual machines and processors that fall into a classification called von Neumann machines. These are machines with instruction sets that are like add, subtract, and then register machines with access to RAM, right? The pi calculus doesn't do computation that way. The pi calculus performs computation by passing messages between what are called processes. That's where you do little bits of computation, but then most of the computation is performed by passing messages back and forth. The row calculus is an extension of this to make it reflective and higher order, and that turns out to make reasoning about the concurrency and the whether or not two computations could possibly affect each other much more straightforward. And so one of the things that the row calculus allows us to do is it allows us to inspect blocks and tell whether there are transactions in two different blocks that could ever possibly interact or not. And in general, the answer is no, there probably won't be transactions in either block that affect each other. And so it doesn't matter, like you can put them in this order or the other order. Don't care which order you commit them to the blockchain, because they go in without affecting each other. And that allows RChain to have a consensus mechanism that focuses on selecting which blocks get in, and while doing much less work to have to sort out conflicting transactions. Ethereum, on the other hand, still, even within its shards, there's still this notion of having a global order of transactions. So you have to sequence everything 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In Rolang, that's not really necessary. And so, we believe that that's going to make it a lot easier to build consensus mechanisms for Rolang-based virtual machines.
Okay. So, and where do you see, like, we have so many other blockchain platforms, and the real use case of Ethereum that has come out is mostly tokenization and ICOs. We have seen some projects, but it's only just people have raised money, but no one has built like an application which a normal person is using or has reached quite a lot of scale. So where do you see that?
They said this about the web too, right? Like in the .com bubble, around the year 2000, one of the biggest complaints about the web was that none of the applications were successful. Nobody was really using it. Nobody's going to be willing to listen. I cannot tell you how many times some business guy looked across the table from me and assured me that no one was going to be willing to put their credit card into a website and buy products online. That they were definitely not going to do that. They certainly weren't going to buy everything online. Right? And now today we have Amazon, right? Or Alibaba or whatever. Every major new disruptive technology goes through a phase like this where the people that are adopting it are visionaries. They're way ahead of the curve. They see potential. They don't know exactly what that potential means yet, but they're willing to try a zillion different things to make something work, and they're excited about it. And so you get these bumps of enthusiasm when a new technology comes along, followed by a valley of disillusionment, right? And I think that's where we are right now. I think the future of blockchain is that from here, what we're going to see is a steady cadence technology coming out that is improvements on what's already gone before. So we're going to get faster blockchains. We're going to get sharded blockchains that scale well. We're going to get blockchains that make it easier to upgrade smart contracts, to make them to reduce the number of bugs that are in them, reduce the severity of the bugs that do get in. We're going to get blockchains that focus more on programming, on storage, on different features and functionality that are related to computation and cloud. And then we're going to get people developing applications on top of those. Most of these applications are probably going to have financial components, because financialization of software is what the blockchain sort of natively does best. But there are a lot of places where financialization is incredibly difficult right now. And if you don't have access to payment processors, if you don't have access to the first world economy, if you don't have access to the derivatives trading markets and that kind of thing, it doesn't matter how great your idea is, it doesn't matter how great your application is, you're not getting off the ground, right? So I think that we're going to see a lot of applications develop like that. I think eventually we're going to have some that are great and lots of users want to use, that'll drive a ton of traffic, and we'll see steady growth in the blockchain industry over the next decade or so.
Like I was trying to address this issue more from like a Bitcoin maximalistic point of view, like that we have like people who say that you can build everything on Bitcoin, like if Lightning comes around, and like dApps, like blockchains in general don't make sense. Like you can use an Amazon server. So do you see like you see like we'll have applications like, say, a decentralized Twitter, or like something like that that will reach the scale of other web applications, like a decentralized application reaching the scale of like a centralized web application?
I think so. I don't think it would be surprising to me if Bitcoin maximalism was correct, right? Because it's rarely the case in technology that the guy who gets there first wins in the long run, right? And that's just because it's so hard. It's just incredibly difficult to get everything right the first time you try it. It's usually the second or third, or sometimes even the fourth major player that gets into a market that ends up being dominant. So, for example, Facebook was not the first major social network. We had Friendster, we had MySpace, and a handful of other technologies before that, all of which had giant user bases of their own, right? Twitter was certainly not the first, the first sort of short message chat service on the internet, right? For years, AOL Instant Messenger dominated this space. The use case of AOL Instant Messenger and Twitter are not that different. So as far as Bitcoin maximalism goes, my guess is that's not likely to be the case. You can make
But
the argument that it contains all the features that you could need, but I just don't see it.
yeah, one thing that is different is like all the development is open source, and it does matter like how big of a developer community you have to drive like the change in the software. So like for Bitcoin, I see a lot of like co-developers have stayed with time. Like in Ethereum, most of the developers that are coming in are not actually co-developers. They are like sort of like JavaScript developers or application developers who are learning for Solidity. So like, do you see that? Would it be the same as web? Does that analogy extend, or isn't it like developers who are, say, if with Bitcoin will eventually grow it faster than other platform? And this question is asked from like an RChain point of view as well. Like, do you feel like how will you get the developer community and like compete with other crypto platforms?
Yeah, I think that the way you compete in this aspect is that you build something that works, that people want to use,
Yeah.
and then once you do that, people will tend to be willing to try it. Developers like to experiment. So if how many developers you had at some particular point in time versus the next project that was coming along, was that big of a deal, then FreeBSD would be beating Linux, and
Yeah.
it's not, right? So, yeah, it's like Bitcoin has a bigger community today because it's been around longer. It's currently more legitimate. People who want a legitimate financial investment, should go to Bitcoin, right? Because you can trade it for currency, you can trade it for all the alts. Like, it's the central party in the market. Do I think that's going to be the case in 5 years? No, I think it'll be replaced by something that looks, a lot like RChain, something that's smart contract oriented, something that's incredibly high performance, something that is completely open source and, governed, not just open source, because the code's checked into GitHub, but open source in the sense that the governance of the protocol is performed in an open and community-driven way. And I think, RChain's the cooperative as an organizational governance mechanism is a really creative approach to solving the problem that has caused so many Bitcoin forks and disagreements between those dev teams, right? And if Bitcoin could figure it out before our platform is ready, maybe they can still win. But we're trying really hard to come up with something competitive that we think developers will be really excited to use.
And like, what sort of applications do you see developers will build on top of RChain?
The RChain Cooperative funded a couple of venture capital firms in the last year, and between them, they've gone out and funded something like 30 startups at this point. And so we've got applications from music to accounting to like unique asset provenance, there are a wide variety. There's an insurance play that I personally I think is a really great idea. There are a wide variety of interesting ideas that are showing up in these startup founders, and they cross the spectrum. You know, I think that it has a lot to do at the end of the day. Kinds of applications that succeed have a lot to do with what kinds of teams execute effectively. And so we may not know for several years now what the biggest markets in blockchain really are. And it may be that, accounting software is or supply chain management. It may be that it's social media, right? There's a big crowd of people at the moment who are frustrated with the centralization of media and advertising technologies and the way that that's sort of taken the people's voice and given it to corporate, global corporations. And they're very interested in using the blockchain to re-democratize, our conversation on the internet. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Got it. So, what's your roadmap with Pyrofex, and what's your business model in general? Do you, are you open for new projects, or are you really focused with RChain?
Well, we are very focused on RChain. The bulk of our devs currently are working on that. We have a number of different projects going on. The business model is that we like projects that have applied mathematics in them. So we're looking for projects where, Mike and I have both got backgrounds in mathematics. We like projects where we can, hire people that are similar to us, that want to think hard about how to apply math to computer science problems in the real world, and that we can engineer solutions that are unique and exciting, whether that's from programming language development and tooling around programming to payment platforms to web servers. Like, we're pretty open-minded, and we like to try different things. So we hope to come out in the market and have a diverse set of products that appeal to a wide range of people in the market space, and we'll see which ones are most popular and which ones people like to work on, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so you are open basically for other projects.
We try to be.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and so how do you want to share how can people get involved, and are you I think you are hiring as well for new positions, so can you share details about that?
Constantly hiring. If you're interested in working for us, you can email your resume to jobs@pyrofex.net, or you can go to our website, https://pyrofex.net, and you can check us out. And then there's a careers page. You can smash some buttons and you can send us an email that way too. So either of those work out great. We'd love to hear from people. We're a global company. We've got a guy in Omsk, Russia. We've got people on the West Coast of the United States and everywhere in between. And so we'd love to hear from anybody that's interested in working with us.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks a lot, Nash, for taking the time out. It was great chatting with you, and I wish you best of luck for Pyrofex and the development you're doing with RChain as well.
Thanks a bunch. I really appreciate your having me.
Awesome.